And I'm here today to talk to you about parenting in a pandemic. So let's get started. Today we're going to cover a few topics that I feel like are the most important pieces to navigating this very difficult situation. We're going to talk about cultivating self-compassion, challenging automatic unhelpful thoughts, and working from home, and then I'll share some resources. Before we start, let me tell you, I really get the difficult situation you might be in if you are a parent of young children. I too was a grad student not long ago. I defended my dissertation just 2 weeks before having my son, Graham, who's now almost 3 years old. I spent my last year on internship working full time while my little one was in daycare for the first time ever. And then last May, almost a year ago to date, I graduated with my PhD. So balancing parenthood with grad school or work isn't easy, but let me be a testament to the fact that it's possible. And I think this pandemic is taking a huge toll on most people. So imagine then adding a kid to the mix. So I think, this is my little boy doing work. He says, it looks really cute. He wants to work like mommy and daddy. And I guess what you can't see in this picture is sort of the chaos of the rest of the day. He refuses naps. He announces his potty needs during our conference calls. This is our new normal. So I'm sharing this to say I get it. This isn't going to be an unrealistic talk about how to solve every problem in 3 easy steps, but what I will share are some ways to rethink this stressful time so it feels a bit more manageable. So let's begin. So we're going to first talk about cultivating self-compassion. It's really hard to be easy on ourselves in really difficult times. I like this quote. I'm not a huge Brene Brown fan, but I happen to love this quote. What we don't need in the midst of struggle is shame for being human. Things aren't going to be perfect, so it's important to kind of reset that expectation. So along those lines, no one is their best self during times of stress. It's really helpful to just lower our expectations of ourselves and of our children. And our stress response really is on rapid fire right now. Our brains are working overtime to keep us safe. That really means that our emotional brain is in control and our thinking brain is sort of taking a back seat. And that could be said for our kids too. I think that, if you have toddler age children, they might not be completely regulated at this time, as they often aren't. So I think a few tips that have been helpful for me and helpful in the psych literature are that you really might need to adjust your rules and routines. I think it's normal for there to be meltdowns and arguments. Your child might have more trouble following directions than usual if they're old enough to even know what directions are. Babies might even regress a little. It's really just a reflection of the stressful situation that we're in, and kids can sense that. I think another important point is to forgive yourself if it all doesn't go to plan. It's really important to cut ourselves some slack. It's okay if you're too tired to make dinner and it's not this perfect meal. If you haven't started that class assignment yet or that work task, it's okay. You might not be as on top of things as you usually are. I think it's okay for your house to be a little messy or emails to wait a little longer in your inbox. I think that, a lot of us are scrolling through Instagram, and this goes to the last point, really just avoiding comparisons to other parents. I think most people don't post their most frustrating days on Instagram or their most frustrating moments on Instagram. Also, not all the people that you're looking at are also students or also working full time and parents. So I think just keeping in mind to do what you have to do to get by, and that your children don't need perfection, they just need you, is really helpful. And I should say that throughout this, I can't see the chat as I present. If you do have things that you want to say, feel free to write them in the chat. I'll be able to check them later on. Or if Mona or Yuleni have comments they want to share with me, feel free to interrupt. Okay. And so the next piece here is really just accepting the things you can't control, which I think for parents is a lot. And just focusing on the stuff that we can control. So fighting against things we can't control really just causes more suffering, more tension, more distress. And that's especially true during a crisis. When we're really feeling uncertain about things, it makes sense that we also feel anxious because uncertainty causes anxiety. An anxious brain focuses on danger. It focuses on all of the what ifs, all the things that are beyond our control, which can really worsen our anxiety. So to reduce anxiety, it helps to think about what are the things we can control. Accepting what we can't control doesn't mean liking our circumstances. It means finding a middle ground, not struggling so much with the circumstances, and not completely ignoring them either. There are ways we can think about expressing preferences throughout the day to exercise our sense of control. So as a parent, it's super easy to say to ourselves, I don't have control over anything. My kid is in charge. Like, he is unpredictable, especially with babies who aren't even on a routine yet. But I would like us to think about this. What is in our control now? Maybe some of our actions, the words we choose with our children, in some cases, not all, how much sleep we get, what we fuel our bodies with, choosing a piece of fruit over kind of like a carb-based snack, how we treat others, how we treat ourselves, and our mindset. Those are all in our control. So I think it's good to kind of not dismiss everything as like, great, I'm just a victim of this. I'm going to go along for the ride. There are little decisions you can make each day. And the last point I'll make in terms of self-compassion is really practicing self-care. I think it is really the first thing from our minds when we're balancing a million things. But I think proving to yourself that you're a good parent by treating yourself like a good parent can be really helpful. Self-care helps us manage stress, mitigate burnout and exhaustion, and keeps us happy. It might feel almost like impossible if you think about all the things on your plate, balancing school or work or parenting responsibilities. And our regular self-care activities like going out for a friend and watching the kids play or hitting the gym might be unrealistic right now. So it's a good time to get creative about self-care. Even though it might look a little bit different at the moment, it's still important to get some in whenever we can, even if it's just a brief moment. And I encourage you on the chat to just chime in with ideas that have been helpful to you, and we can look at those. I'll pause for a minute in case anyone wants to share that. Okay. I don't see anything on the chat, so I'm going to move on. And we will get to some ideas in a moment for them that I have. So along these lines, let's click through some of these ideas. Just dancing with your toddler or like dancing for your baby could be really fun. Doing a short meditation before you get out of bed, going for a walk while maybe talking on the phone with a fellow parent who really gets your struggles at the moment. Trying to nap when they nap, even if you have older kids, that rule of thumb can be helpful in times of stress. Definitely trying to get enough sleep. And again, I understand the challenge of that if you really do have a very young child. Really just striving for what's good enough, not thinking about things that need to be perfect. We'll talk more to that in a bit. Getting a group of friends together for a happy hour or coffee on Zoom, and spending some time outdoors. So the last point that I'll make here is that your kids don't really need a perfect parent. They need a present parent. And right now it's okay if that means a multitasking parent or a slightly frazzled parent. Kids are really resistant. Young kids barely know what's going on. So take the pressure off yourself, throw out the rules, and just show up. Be consistent. All your kids really want right now is you. And I know that can feel like a lot of pressure, but it's okay if you right now are not perfect and you're messy and you're a little stressed out. So the next part that I'm going to talk about, and I'll actually use a video, and so I would appreciate if there is any difficulty hearing the video to let me know. is challenging unhelpful thoughts. So I'm going to play this video. Let me know if there's any challenges in hearing it. I will take a look at the chat for that purpose. And let's get started.
Today, we're going to talk about ATs, also known as automatic thoughts. They're those destructive and unreasonably negative thoughts that you have that make things go from bad to worse. Avoiding feels as impossible as avoiding red lights when you're running late. You're going to hit one or two, or every single light from your house to work on that morning that your report's due at 9 a.m. and your boss is already on the edge and you might just get fired and then get evicted. And see? Automatic thoughts can pop up and escalate as easy as that. Regardless of reality, ATs are the things that help you build a couple of red lights up to an Armageddon-scale catastrophe in a matter of seconds. Today on Wellcast, we're going to show you how to manage those harmful automatic thoughts with healthier, rational ones. And we're going to use our triple R exercise. You are going to record, rationalize, and replace your ATs. But first, how serious are ATs? LA shows that people who got caught in cycles of automatic negative thinking became clinically depressed, self-critical, and less successful in both their work and personal lives. According to Dr. Glenn Scaraldi, these negative, disordered ATs fall into 13 categories, all of which take a toll on your mental health. Here are some of the categories. Assuming or mind reading. Like when you are sure someone is mad at you, even though you haven't spoken to them just because they walked in and didn't say hi. Shoulds, must, and oughts. Those are the insane demands that we make upon ourselves in our quest to be impossibly perfect. The fairy tale fantasy, where we demand an ideal for our life and decide that anything less than that ideal just isn't fair. Overgeneralizing. Nobody likes me. I always ruin everything. And finally, catastrophizing. When you take a little problem and turn it into a big, terrible, life-changing event. How do we stop ATs? Good question. And the shorter answer is we don't. But by being conscious of the fact that we're having them and working to replace them with rational thoughts, we can keep them from endangering our mental health. And that is today's exercise. All right, everybody, take out your Wellcast journal. It's time to learn the 3 R's. Step 1, record an upsetting event. When something upsetting happens during the day, describe it in your Wellcast journal and record it in excruciating, painful detail. For example, today I found out that I got a C on my midterm. Step 2, rationalize. Now it's time to think about the automatic thoughts associated with the event. Pause and print this chart. In column 1, write down each AT you had about the upsetting event. For example, I am never going to graduate. In the second column, try and label each distortion. Some ATs might be rational, but most won't be. They'll most often fall into one of the categories we discussed. I am never going to graduate falls into the category of catastrophizing. Step 3, replace. In the third column, respond to each distorted AT. Talk back. Get those negative thoughts off your chest. And if it's hard to do that, try to imagine what you'd say to a friend who is struggling with their own AT and say it to yourself. When you're responding to those ATs, ask yourself some questions like, what's the evidence for this response? Is this a believable outcome for my situation? Will the world end if I get a C on this midterm? Of course not. So as time goes on, and you're more used to responding to your ATs instead of letting them take over your life, you should be able to replace those ugly negative thoughts with more rational ones. Let's recap. To keep your automatic thoughts from ruining your mood and running rampant, you're going to record upsetting events, rationalize them by addressing each irrational thought, and replacing the irrational automatic thought with a rational one. The world is not going to end. Tweet us at WatchWellcast.
Okay, so we'll jump back in. I hope that was a good overview of what unhelpful thoughts are and how we can start to challenge them. But since this might be a new concept, I figured I'd go over a couple of really common thinking traps in parenthood, and examples of those. So there's 2 slides of these, 7 thinking traps total. I'll walk through each one, and I'm looking at the chat, so feel free to chime in if you can relate, or if there's another example that you can think of. So one of these examples is called all or nothing thinking. Sometimes this is called dichotomous thinking or black and white thinking. It's all the same idea. And this is the idea of viewing a situation in 2 categories rather than part of a continuum. It's either this or that. And so thinking of things like, as a parent, if my kids watch TV all morning, I've then failed as a mom, rather than maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe that wasn't the most ideal situation, but what you needed to do to get through your conference call. Catastrophizing, predicting the future negatively without considering other possible outcomes. This can also be called fortune telling. And so this idea is, getting a bad grade on that last assignment means I'm probably going to fail the class. So really jumping to conclusions there. Then there's discounting the positive. I think our brains really just have a negative bias. And like I talked about before, in times of stress, we're even more prone to looking at things in a negative light. So discounting the positive is really telling yourself unreasonably that your positive experiences or qualities don't count. So for instance, if something goes well, you can't really celebrate that success. So the example here is, I got my kids to listen, but that doesn't mean I'm a good parent. I just got lucky. Then there's emotional reasoning. And this is when you have a really strong feeling and you think, okay, well, then it must be true. So the example we've used here is, I feel overwhelmed, therefore I'm not cut out to be a dad. Because the feeling of being overwhelmed is so strong that it means something. It creates a negative thought. The last 3 that I'll share are magnification or minimization. So when evaluating yourselves or others, you magnify the negative or minimize the positive. So even though my son is thriving, that doesn't mean it's my doing. Really kind of not giving yourself credit. You'll notice that there's overlap in a lot of these thinking traps. Then there's mind reading. So believing you know what others are thinking and failing to consider more likely possibilities. So thinking, oh my gosh, that mom is judging me for not having better control over my kids at the park. And the last one I'll highlight, and I think it really speaks to the idea of perfectionism and trying to do a really good job. And as ambitious grad students or employees of the university, this could really play a role. So these are should and must statements. And this is when you have a fixed idea of how you or others should behave, and you overestimate the negative impact of your mistakes. So you think to yourself, oh, it's terrible that I made that mistake. I should always be perfect. So anytime you're using those words like should, must, always, speaking in absolute, it's sort of a red flag. Like, am I being fair to myself? Am I falling into a thinking trap? So I know that paints a picture of all the ways we could think in a negative way, but the next part of this is responding to thinking traps. And so, feel free to take a screenshot of this slide. I think it could be really helpful when you start to have a negative emotion or negative thought to ask yourself some questions to determine, is this fair? Like, am I looking at this in a balanced way? So some of the questions you can ask yourself, and there's tons of versions of this online. I thought this was a really helpful one, is what is the evidence this thought is true? There must be some truth to it, or else I wouldn't be thinking it. But also, what is the evidence that this thought is false? Is there something, like, would this hold up in court? Is there enough evidence that it's true? Or are there reasons to believe maybe it's not completely true all the time? Are there other ways the situation can be approached? I like this, that what is the worst thing that can happen? How would you cope? I think we often think, oh, I wouldn't be able to survive. But I think sometimes we would be able to, and it's helpful to think down that path. Or what is the best thing that could happen, and how would you cope? We often don't think of that. I think also, what is the most realistic outcome is a helpful question. Really, the impact of believing your automatic thought, is it helpful to you? Is it worth engaging with more? Or is it something you can let go or put to the side for the moment? And then also how the situation, how you would feel about the situation if you change your thought. And I think sometimes we're not so kind to ourselves, but we can be kind to others. So it's nice to ask ourselves, if a friend had this thought, what advice would I give them? Okay, our last section of content before we go into resources is tips for working from home. So this is a bit more practical, like how do we actually navigate the day-to-day? And I think it's hard for most people. Working from home is going to present a lot of challenges, and then again, adding kids to the mix really makes it difficult. But there are ways that we could make small changes to kind of be a bit more productive and to mitigate stress. So these are some general tips that I will share one by one, and these really apply to anyone, kids or not. The first tip is to start the day right, to shower, get dressed, just follow a routine as if you were going to work or to school at UCSD. I know that can be hard if your kid is screaming in the next room, but do your best, even if it ends up, being that you have to wake up a little earlier, getting that shower in, changing out of the clothes that you slept in. I joke with my students to change into a clean pair of sweatpants and start their day right. The next one is to schedule a bit of self-care. This is going to look different for people with families, but it's still possible to go outside with your family or to make sure you're eating when you feed your kids. Also, there are some rare moments of silence. Luckily, a lot of kids like to nap, and really savoring those moments and carving out some time for yourself to meditate or to really engage with the quiet for a moment. The next one is to connect with others. It's really important to feel well supported. I think taking away the in-person contact with others makes it really hard to feel supported. So thinking about ways you can connect digitally, connecting with other parents, trading tips, and just normalizing that this is really hard can be helpful. And the last is to set limits. So, it's really hard when you're working from home. It feels like work can seep in at any moment, but being a bit boundaried about when and how you complete assignments can be really helpful. Even carving out space in your home that feels like this is my dedicated space to work. I know we all don't live in like mansions with separate home offices. I certainly don't, but really just a simple table in the corner of a room can be enough to carve out space and to not let your work really seep into the rest of your life. So those are all great, right? But then what happens when we think about adding kids to the mix? There's a lot we can still do to, cope with this. So sorry, my PowerPoint froze for a moment. The first one I want to highlight is communicating with your partner about your responsibilities and expectations. I think this is really important. Even right before this call, I told my partner, can you take our son outside? I am not gonna be able to deal with interruptions on this presentation. And even though it wasn't ideal for him, he was able to do that. I think talking about the busier parts of your day with your partner, if you have one, can be really helpful, and then trying to kind of tag team and juggle things. Another thing that could be helpful is if your kids are old enough to use a sign or post-it note, or even do this for your partner to show when you're really unavailable. I think as a therapist, I just can't have interruptions during the day. And it's really helpful. We have a little stop sign on the door that my husband drew. And my 3-year-old or almost 3-year-old really can pay attention to that and say, oh, mama's working in there. So I think that could be helpful. Another thing is kids really crave routine. And so creating a daily schedule for each child to follow, really using icons if they can understand pictures can be helpful. And that way it's not you against the kid, you saying, it's lunchtime, we need to eat right now, because I think some young kids are not really gonna go for that. They have minds of their own. But to be like, oh, what does the schedule say is next is a nice way around that. I think it's also important to identify the most important parts of your day and think about, and again, this depends on the age of your child, activities that could require a bit less supervision during those times. So for instance, if you have some flexibility in your schedule and you can coordinate an important meeting for during your child's nap time, that's great. Or if you can set your toddler up with crayons, and I say crayons because you don't want paint or markers everywhere, before an important call, that's something that the toddler might be able to do on their own and not ask for help every 2 minutes. It's good to set boundaries, great to reward good behavior. I think we tend to, as parents, really correct a lot of behavior and not really reward or praise your kids when they're doing great. So it's really important to be like, wow, that whole call, mommy was on a really important call, and that whole time you kept busy and you knew not to speak really loudly and to use your indoor voices. I think that could be really helpful because the kid's not going to know that mattered unless we praise them. I think it's important to be realistic, account for interruptions in our schedules. It's not realistic to think we're going to be as productive as we had been. And I think that this is going to take a lot out of us. So really fighting exhaustion with self-care, ensuring you get enough sleep if you can, and try to get creative about exercising. Even just putting a yoga mat out to do a few stretches between calls or between tasks can be helpful. So I want to devote some time to talk about resources and further support. If you are a student at UCSD, you are entitled to free confidential counseling through CAPS. CAPS is currently providing psychotherapy and psychiatry services for students via telehealth, including video and phone appointments. I think usually CAPS has a long wait list. Right now, I'll share that there isn't such a long wait list, so it's a great opportunity to connect with a provider for free. Therapy is rarely free. The other thing that can be helpful is to know that there's a crisis phone number through CAPS. So if you have an urgent need and our office is closed, you can call the phone number listed here and press 2 if it's after hours, and you will speak to a counselor 24/7. I think it's also important to know that, the stress that we're under right now can bring a lot up or really exacerbate issues between a couple. And there's a really great 4-session workshop. I'm actually co-leading it with Dr. Greg Cook, and it's going to be during summer session 1. Feel free to sign up. It's a quick sign up and we can contact you. It's 4 sessions, once a week for 4 weeks over the summer session. We will pull people to see when is a good time for you. It's okay if you're both not UCSD students. You can access this workshop even if just one of the partners in your relationship is a UCSD student. The other thing is CAPS does couples counseling, and only one partner needs to be a UCSD student. So that could be a good way to access services if you are not a student. So again, the sign up link, and I encourage you to save this or click on it now if you can. If you're interested at all, it's really an enriching, lovely workshop. It doesn't mean that there's like a problem in your relationship. It just means you're working on getting your relationship a bit stronger. And under stress, why not, right? The other thing that's happening through CAPS is that every single day of the week, there is a drop-in workshop. A lot of these have been tailored to meet the needs of students during the pandemic. So they talk about how to build community and to promote social connection and togetherness, even though we're not together. This schedule is listed on the CAPS website under CAPS drop-in workshops, and feel free to take a screenshot of it if you'd like. Pause for a moment. Okay. And I can go back to slides later on if somebody wants to take a screenshot and didn't do it in time. And the other thing that can be really helpful is it's really hard to connect to other people right now, but CAPS hosts these community open forums. I think it's almost every single day of the week for different groups. A lot of them seem to fall on Tuesdays actually. And yeah, there's a coming out group, a Black women's collective, graduate students of color forum, gay men's relationship forum, graduate and professional student forum, which can be very relevant to people on this call, and the Apimeta Community and South Asian DESI Forum. And that's Apimeta stands for Asian Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern, and DESI American. So it's an all-encompassing group in a lot of ways. It's really cool to be able to chime in in. You can connect to one of these groups once. You don't have to ever come back if you don't like it, but it's nice to connect with other grad students and use that space to really feel like you're not alone. If you don't feel like you're necessarily ready for therapy or don't want any of the other resources, or maybe in conjunction with the other resources, there are some online tools that can be really enriching. And so there's Mindful You, and it's a 30-day mindfulness challenge, just practicing meditations for 5 to 10 minutes each day. There's WellTrack, and so I think a lot of the time we think, oh, I'm like really struggling and not doing well, but it's really interesting actually to see how your mood fluctuates based on activity and other factors. And the last one is Tao, and it's therapy assistance online, so it's sort of like a self-led therapy protocol. I realize that some people on this call may not be students, and so I wanted to include some resources for non-student partners or for employees of the university. And I realize now that FSAP or EAP is also another resource for employees. But a few things I want to highlight here. You know, today we talked about navigating parenting in a pandemic, but there's also, you know, a lot that people can go through in terms of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. And I think that talking to providers who really specialize in that area is important. There is a Postpartum Support International training around this, and that's really like a gold standard in terms of being a specialist in this area. So you can access providers through UCSD Women's Reproductive Mental Health. That's again around the perinatal period, before, during, and after giving birth to a child. There is Postpartum Support International has a therapist directory, and you can find local people who have gotten that certification or certificate. And then, you know, I think often we forget about our dads, and there is actually a local private practice that focuses specifically on men's issues and parenting. I've met the owner of this practice, Dr. Danny Singley. He was a CAPS postdoctoral resident way back when, and he's really excellent. So I wanted to provide a link to that website. I'm not sure about insurance coverage, but it's important, I think, to also speak to what could be useful for dads. I'm going to open it up now. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like, to just some questions, discussions, if anything resonated with you. If you have additional questions, you can also send it via chat or privately to me via chat if you don't want everyone to have your question. I'm happy to keep things anonymous.
Thank you, Kristen. I just wanted to share one more resource. So some parents are with older children that are in the K through 12 system or even pre-K, and HDH Wellness and Engagement. So my area started a free K through 12 tutoring that's like basically office hours on Tuesdays and Fridays from 5 to 7. And we've been doing this for the last 3 weeks, and it's been really, really successful. And so if I know a lot of parents have struggled with facilitating an at-home learning environment for their kids, and if you have children, and so, you know, some of those concepts that, you know, last time we were in school, like it's kind of foreign to us now. So if you go to hdhwellness.ucsd.edu and you click on the Triton's Tutor Program, we have wonderful UCSD students that are in undergrad and their master's program, even PhD candidates that are providing tutoring sessions. And, you know, you just sign up and we'll send you the Zoom link for that session.
Great.
I also want to put the link to our survey. So it's important to us that we get your feedback about this workshop, and we want to expand, you know, more parent and family resources. So this is going to help us understand like what these parents are needing and what they want to see in the future. So thank you again, Kristen.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And also this, sorry.
So we're also creating a family wellness page on our website. So we'll put resources like this video on there as well as other resources for families to help those not just in our grad and family housing, but our staff as well.
yeah, and this video will be uploaded to our site and our YouTube channel, and we'll definitely market it out to those who weren't able to make it, because I think this is really important and a lot of more parents should be aware.
Great. Any questions from any of the participants? My dog is barking. Sorry about that. The challenges of working from home. Okay, I do want to credit some of the resources that I pulled from, just share the reference slide. And yeah, feel free if you have additional questions. I am fine with people reaching out to me. I currently do therapy out of the Student Health Center at UCSD, and I'm a CAPS employee. So if you'd like to work directly with me, or if you'd like to be connected with somebody or have additional questions, feel free to, you could send a private message here, or send your student ID number to Mona or Eleni.
Okay, so if I don't think anyone has more questions, thank you again, Kristen, for having us. It's a pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone, thank you.
Bye, take care.